keystroke shortcut that will take us to view this macro. Alt F11 it's called. It is. And the macro we're seeing here isn't the one we want, but this screen, and by the way, press Alt F11 to go back into Excel. In any workbook, or let's say any time you're using Excel, when you press Alt F11, you're thrust into a totally different environment. It's the world of Visual Basic. Alt F11, there we are. On the left-hand side of the screen here are some system files and other workbooks. And somewhere in here, if you did create a macro in Personal Macro Workbooks, you'll see this. And over on the left-hand side, you'll see modules. And here's Module 1. Now, we're going to come back in here a little bit because that's a lot all at once here. But here's the macro that just got recorded. And some people take one look at this and they're sort of stymied and say, I don't even want to be in this environment. But let's talk about what happens. And I want to suggest that for many people, you frequently don't need to look at this very long, if at all. When you record a macro, you automatically create, and for want of a better term, a small program. It automatically begins and ends with the word sub. Whatever name you used is right here in the top here. This all gets generated automatically. If you gave it a description here, that's what you'll see right here. This line here is just a repeat. Anytime you see a single quote, everything to the right of that is considered a comment or non-code. In a certain sense, you could say, you could just get rid of all that. It wouldn't change the macro at all. If you assign the keystroke shortcut as a service for you, it provides that documentation right here. It reminds you of what you've done. Control-Shift-N. Now, I'm going to make this look even bigger, perhaps for more readability here. There's a command up there, Tools, Options, Editor Format. Not critical, but just make it bigger so we can see this pretty clearly. There we go. Now, do you have to know what's going on here? In a certain sense, no. A couple things to point out. At the very beginning of this macro, remember how I did scrolling and I said, don't do things that aren't critical. That was a scrolling action. And here it is. Now, the macro happened so fast we didn't even see this. I'm just going to get rid of it anyway. It's innocuous. But I did record the actions of selecting the binoculars button, choosing the special go-to special it was called. I took about 4 actions, and that got translated into this. Now, am I going to worry about that and would I have ever typed it? No. I then highlighted the cells with a certain color, that pale green. All of this gets translated into this code here. Am I going to worry about this? Do I really care what all this means? No, not at all. Now, I'm kind of, on the one hand, making fun of this and ridiculing it, but at the same time, every time you record a macro, and it will vary somewhat depending on the person, not a bad idea, take a quick look at it. Over time, you begin to understand this environment a little bit. Some people start to use macros more heavily, and they probably need at some point, perhaps, to take a course in Visual Basic. It could be one of those courses that meets for 3 consecutive days. I think better might be a course at a nearby community college, possibly, meets a couple nights a week or something, hour and a half for maybe 10 weeks. That's not for everybody, and not everybody will need this, but this is a programming language, Visual Basic for applications. And every time you record a macro, whatever you do gets turned into this. Now, someone else might say, well, I don't care what it looks like. Does my macro work? Of course it works. Well, why bother going here? Well, you can take that approach. You won't learn a whole lot about the code, and maybe you won't need to. So I'm kind of making this a perfect world for all people here, but suggesting that it helps to know a little bit about this, and in varying degrees over time, some of you will need to know more about this. Some of you will have a greater interest in it. But I know many, many proficient Excel users who aren't too adept at macros, and they don't need them that often. That's fine. I know other people who are not necessarily, Excel experts who know a lot about macro code. I'm going to press Alt F11. We're right back into here.